Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the fakers gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna making luck, a Dominion podcast. Have you figured out the raffle for this week? Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
Yeah, Dominion podcast.
Yeah. My name is Adam, and this is Jake. Hi, Jake. How you doing?
I am pretty good. How are you, Adam?
I'm feeling okay.
Good.
I got like 7 hours of sleep last night, which is
nice.
Way more than usual.
It's about to be even more than your usual.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
My wife already can usually not sleep longer than 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah. I know the feeling. So, like, Adam's got a kid on the way. I just got a Nintendo Switch. Both of us have a lot less free time than we used to. It's like we're really in the same place, him and I.
Before we get to anything else, I want to point out some stuff. We heard from some people, and those people made us decide on last episode's topic, which is what to do when there's no X, with X being a variety of various things. And we heard from some other people saying that they really appreciated the episode. And first of all, I want to point out that this means that the two of us are amazing. So
that's one thing it means.
Just want to take some credit for that. So
there we go.
Yeah, you guys are listening to a great podcast. Good choice. Anyway, I'm also very humble.
We want to congratulate you on your choice of podcast.
But also what it means is that we heard from you, and the podcast was better for it.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great if we continued hearing from you.
Yeah, so, like, we not only, like, yes, we actually do the episode you suggest, but also, like, other people like the episodes you suggest.
Yeah.
That's, like, because it's not just, if you want to know a thing, you're probably not the only one who wants to hear about it. Like, this, what to do when there's no X thing, like, maybe some of these other people didn't even know they had that question, but, like, they're glad we answered it, so... thank you very much for the feedback and for helping us make a better podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to contact us for feedback, suggestions, really anything, just to tell us how incredibly handsome we are.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened in a while, so if
That's
anyone's
true.
out there. But anyway, you can do that. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for doing that. You can just leave a comment in the comments section. There's various links in the description. If you're listening to an audio-only version of this podcast, which we have, that's all sorts of various places wherever you get your podcasting materials. However, you can just head on over to adamhorton.com. That'll link you to my blog, and at the top, there's a whole bunch of links to a whole bunch of other cool things out there, other sources of content that we make besides the podcast, including videos that we do on the kingdom that we talk about on the podcast, the beginning and end of each episode.
Definitely.
So you can check out the YouTube channel from there where there's that stuff. There's a forum there. There's a link to our Discord server where you can hit us up there. There's also a page with our contact information on it.
Yeah.
Email addresses. I think both of our Facebook pages are on there. We want to hear from you. And however you're willing to shout at us, our ears are open. If there's a way you'd like to shout at us that doesn't exist, open our ears. Let us know about it, and we probably do it.
As well, the other thing that you can engage in if you go to these channels and find on the YouTube if you're just interested in watching them is the Dominion coaching series that we do, where we take recorded Dominion games and we just analyze them play by play, talk about what the player is doing right, what the players maybe could improve on, and just watch a game of Dominion and break it down. That is kind of what we do with our own videos, but it's a lot easier with the luxury of hindsight, and it's a pretty cool format that we like to do. There are a few that are my games that Adam has analyzed or that we both have, and then we've taken some games from you guys as well.
Yeah, if you want a fresh set of eyes, something to help you look at your play more critically, I think it's a great resource. And I think we have a couple of videos that we're working on, but the more we get, the more we'll end up publishing. And don't think that it's not appropriate for you because of who you are or what your skill level is.
Yeah.
If you want to get better at Dominion, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you'll get better at Dominion.
Yeah, and us too.
Agreed.
But So this episode, what we're going to talk about is a card called Capital from the Empire's expansion, and we're pretty excited to get into that. But last episode, as I mentioned, we did What Do You Do When There's No X? And I think the X's that we talked about are what do you do when there's no draw, what do you do when there's no village, what do you do when there's no trashing, and what do you do when there's no plus buy, or way to do better than a province per turn. So this kingdom, we explored that with mostly the plus buy. That's really what was missing here.
Right. You want to read some cards to me?
Sure. So the cards in this kingdom were Stonemason, Familiar, Shantytown, Tunnel, Silk Road, Temple, Backer, Mandarin, Puka, Witch. We had the landmarks Colonnade and Fountain. And because Puka is in the kingdom, we had the heirloom Cursed Gold replacing one of our starting coppers. Once more for our audio-only listeners, we had Stonemason, Familiar, Shantytown, Tunnel, Silk Road, Temple, Baker, Mandarin, Puka, and Witch. We also had landmarks Colonnade and Fountain, and one of our starting coppers is replaced with Cursed Gold.
Yeah, so I think you can always open with a 5 here because of Baker and Cursed Gold.
And I think that 5 is pretty much always Witch, right?
Yeah, you definitely need to get a Witch. That's important. I think what else you get kind of depends on where your Cursed Gold ends up. If you're able to hit 7, then Stonemason for Witch and Baker is pretty good.
Yeah.
If you're not, then usually you can hit 4 to get a Temple, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, Witch Temple was decent. You're really sad, obviously, if you draw if they collide or you draw the Temple dead, but, you know.
That's Dominion for you.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta open with 2 terminals
and a curse. Same thing, right? A curse and clenching.
Yeah, so there was a lot of talk about the kingdom on the forums, on Adam's website, and a lot of it was really good talk, and got a lot of the way to what we ended up settling on is the best strategy here.
Yeah, so I think what we all agreed upon, and this was mentioned in the last episode, you can build a deck that draws a lot of cards. You can use Shantytown and maybe Puka and put a lot of cards in your hand. You can use Stonemason for extra gains to maybe get something on top of your 1 province per turn. I thought that deck was not good. I thought that just keeping your coppers around, going for fountain points, and just kind of aiming for 1 decent card a turn with some bakers was going to be good. And to that effect, I think that much is agreed upon.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you don't see this very often, but one of those, like, accepted Dominion maxims where getting control of your deck and thinning down and drawing a bunch of cards, it's, like, usually always good, but this is one of those few cases where you have to wonder, like, what am I drawing into again? Because you can put a bunch of cards in your hand, but, like, Copper is actually one of the better cards in your deck here, which is sad. But true.
Well, I mean, Fountain's great. That's not sad. 15 points is happy.
This is true. You like those points at the end of the game. You like having them. You don't like drawing those coppers all the time, though.
I love Copper, man.
Although you do like drawing the coppers, though, because your deck sucks here.
It's true. I think it's worth mentioning why that deck isn't good.
Yeah.
The reason is, in order to increase your hand size, you have to play a Shantytown and you have to play a Puka. That's the only way to increase your hand size.
Or a Lucky Shantytown.
Okay, so if you're counting on that, don't, because Shantytown is a bad card. Anyway, moving on. The only way to increase... Well, it is.
For that, yes.
It's just a bad card. Shantytown's a bad card.
Really? All right. Well, this isn't a Shantytown episode, but we'll come back to that.
Well, we don't need a whole episode for that. Shantytown's a bad card.
This is a bonus. You get Shantytown, too, in this episode on Capital. You get Adam's analysis on Shantytown.
Yeah, it was pretty easy. Bad card.
All right.
So anyway,
moving on.
But you have to find the Shantytown, you also have to find the Puka, and you have to find a treasure that you're able to trash. Without increasing your hand size, you have to find those 3 cards.
And the end result of all that is probably that you have a bunch of curses and estates and, like, nothing really that great to play in your hands.
Well, you only increased your hand size by 1.
Yeah. and there's not a whole lot to draw into.
So, like, that's a giant pain in the butt, and so I'm going to need some amazing payload to make it worth it. And, like, you can't do better than a province per turn. You can maybe play some stonemasons. Gross as heck. Like, what are you doing with your life? I mean, and also, the draw isn't sustainable. You have to trash a treasure to do it, and, like, are you going to gain that treasure back? How are you going to do that?
You're not.
You're not.
I mean, is the thing.
You can't.
I mean, you could be, like, using stonemason to trash something and get copper. That's too cute to work.
But you have to draw the stonemason and the thing you want to trash.
It's real bad. So, what did end up being pretty good here is remembering, one, that this game is going to have a pretty low point ceiling. I don't think Province has piled any of the times that we played.
I did it against a bot once, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, so the deck this is what we call a slog. And different people will debate what they're going to call a slog, but I think that this is one of those, I know it when I see it, and this felt very sloggy.
I think a slog is how you feel when you're playing the board. And I think the number of swear words you said per turn, I think that's a good metric.
Yeah, right. So I swore a lot. And so there's a really low point ceiling, and whenever there's a low point ceiling, the point chips matter a lot because they, matter more proportionately. So getting colonnade points, you end up jumping through some hoops you might not jump through normally. Like, you buy a stonemason you didn't want to buy just to get the colonnade points. That is actually pretty relevant here. That concept that Adam hates hearing about, where when you gain the points, you're taking them away from your opponent on the colonnade board. So it's kind of like getting 2 points. I
don't hate hearing about that.
No, I mean, you think it's wrong most of the time to think that way. But it was right to think it here.
No?
Exactly. You heard it here on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast. So, it was definitely, when you get those colonnade points, you're, like, taking them away from your opponent.
Colonnade points ran in, like, one game we played.
I think they ran every time.
Also, temple points. You would buy a temple that you didn't want just to get the points on the pile. That's also significant.
You don't trash copper here. Not just because copper's one of the better cards in your deck, which, again, sad but true, but also the fountain points are really not surmountable. If your opponent gets the fountain points and you don't, you're going to lose because the points... Like, the endgame score here was like 30, 35.
15 is a very large number, so you want that many points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think Silk Road turns out to be really important. And, I mean, Province is great, but the thing is, if you go for Provinces, it's hard to end the game, and if the game goes long, Silk Road can score a lot of points. It can break that rule of low point ceiling if you get, more than 5 of them.
Yeah, it's probably not going to break the rule of a low point ceiling, like, compared to other games of Dominion, but... It's a lot of points for this, just because nothing else is really attainable.
I think Stonemason's a big factor in that deck.
Yeah.
You can play a Stonemason and gain 2 victory cards. You can get tunnels, or you can get Silk Roads, or you can get estates, and that's a big deal. You want to gain a lot of victory cards with Silk Road, because Silk Road is worth more points if you have a lot of victory cards. Look at that deep insight on Making Luck. A Dominion podcast.
A slogging podcast.
Slogging podcast.
Yeah, so the Silk Road split is something that you don't hear a whole lot about usually, but it definitely came up here. I think it was pretty important a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Getting 6 Silk Roads felt pretty powerful.
Game decisive, yeah.
Yeah, because, once... that happens. I mean, and like, if your opponent gets all of them, you're probably going to lose either way, because you can't, like you said, you can't empty provinces quickly enough to make that back up. And then curses run, Silk Roads run, and then it's pretty easy to end the game. Usually, I think the thing that happened is somebody stonemasoned for the last 2 actions in the pile, but it could have ran estates or tunnels too, and that would have been fine.
Sure.
So... that was this board. It was pretty interesting. There was actually a point of contention from And just an interesting concept to think about is how much do you play your Cursed Gold?
Pretty much everyone on the internet was saying you just play it every single time. I think that's pretty far from being good.
I played that way a few times, and then I
destroyed?
played...
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I played a few times where I thought about it first and maybe decided not to play it a few times, and... I mean, like, obviously, if I think about it, I do better. But, you know, I really think that there are a lot of times when playing it's pretty harmful.
Yeah, that's what happens with Cursed Gold.
Just because the curses are going to run doesn't mean they need to run into your deck right now.
Yeah. But if I play my Cursed Gold, the curses run out, and it makes my Cursed Gold better.
And your opponents, too.
Yeah.
But you're a nice guy like that, so...
Well, no, not me. Maybe
No.
the listener is. Not me, though.
Yeah, so that was this board. It was sloggy. If you don't like slogs of Dominion, don't play this board. But, you know, I'm not like that.
Or if you don't like Dominion.
Yeah, if you don't like Dominion,
yeah,
don't play that board.
But please continue to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you can hear our recommendations for different products you should buy.
Yeah. Like a Nintendo Switch.
Or Oreo candy bars.
Ooh, yeah. We haven't had any food recommendations in a while.
That's true.
You know,
stop making lunch meat.
The in-laws were in town this weekend,
yeah?
and we went to historic Lebanon, Ohio. They have a very prestigious and historic hotel there called the Golden Lamb.
Okay.
12.
I've been there.
Yeah, 12 former U.S. presidents have stayed at the Golden Lamb.
Yeah.
Including G.O.W. Bush. They could write out the entirety of, like, frickin' Samuel Clemens or whatever on those placards, but they didn't have enough room for RGE on G.O.W. Bush's placard, which I just found to be hilarious. But anyway, their restaurant there has some fried chicken, which is impeccable. Would highly recommend.
Yeah, so feel free to come down to Ohio, stay at the Golden Lamb, get some fried chicken from the president's mouth. And so speaking of America, we're a capitalistic society.
Yeah. Capital.
Capital is a card
yeah,
from
nice
Dominion.
One.
Yeah, we're really working on our segues here on making.
I thought that one was great.
Yeah, it was very smooth.
I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, no regrets. You're not going to edit this out.
Yeah, that's fine.
So capital is a treasure from the Empire's expansion, and it costs 5. And when you play it, you get $6 in a buy. And then when you discard this from play, you take 6 debt at the end of your turn. So,
and then you may pay off debt.
Oh, and then you can pay off debt with any excess money that you have. Yeah. So it gives you 6 money and a buy for this turn, but then after the turn, you're going to have debt equal to the money it gave you. So, well, you know, you're going to have 6 debt to save for it. So, in a way, it's giving you $0 over the course of 2 turns, but you get 6 right now in a buy.
Yeah, it's kind of like Tactician, only you get your good turn now and your sucky turn later.
Yeah, it's stealing this turn to get... It's stealing... Tactician steals this turn to give it to next turn. This is stealing next turn to give it to this turn, in a way.
So, I've never drank an alcoholic beverage before, but I've heard from my wife, who has... This was before she was pregnant, in case you were curious, but that's none of your business! Anyway, she told me that drinking alcohol is like stealing happiness from tomorrow.
And giving it to today. Yeah, and that's a lot like capital. On last episode, we referred to it as capital punishment. Because it's like you play it now, like, this is great! And next turn rolls around and you're like, this is not great! So, is this card great?
Capital punishment.
Yeah, most of the time, no.
Yeah.
Because money density-wise in a standard deck, whatever that means, but money density-wise, it's worse than copper, right? Over the course of 2 turns, yeah, it's a treasure that's kind of worth 0 money.
Yeah, so like you need something to make this good, because without something to make it good, it's worth $0.
Right.
And I like dollars.
This is a card you need to be careful with because it can very easily do nothing for you.
Yeah.
And not only do nothing, it can also be harmful.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could have bought a copper, or maybe even a silver. But silver's not a good card, so don't worry about it.
So we end up looking at capital in terms of power level, in my opinion, as a little bit of a light switch card. What I mean by that is it's a card that's either on or it's off. There are times when Capital is freaking amazing, and it's just the best thing at what it does, and it enables some really OP broken crap in the kingdom. And then when it's not doing that, it's a card like that's worse than Copper, and you'll never buy. And there's very little in between.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're going to spend the first part of this episode talking about the cases where it's not totally broken but still good. But I think the order of magnitude of how good it is very different. When it's very amazing, it is super amazing. And when it's maybe better than not getting it, it's marginal.
Yeah, right. It's pretty much a case of this card is centric to the kingdom and it dominates it, or I'm never buying this.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, so I think the first way that you can make Capital good is it says plus buy on it, and like if a card says plus buy on it, it's going to be relevant because sometimes you need plus buy, and sometimes there's no other thing that does it, right?
Right. That's the most mediocre it could be, is if it's the only plus buy.
Right, so I just want to make it clear that if you're drawing and playing this Capital every turn, which is the only reason you would get it for its plus buy,
sure,
then like I really hope you're using that like every turn, and I really hope there's pretty much no other source of plus buy on the board. Pretty much anything would be better.
It's not quite as bad as Ruined Market for plus buy because it doesn't take an action, but it's pretty close.
Well, also you can buy it, which is a big deal. You don't always get that with Ruined Market.
Right, and it also, like, if on the turn that you end the game, it's better than Ruined Market by a lot.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, so, I mean, this concept of it being really, really good or really, really bad definitely dissipates a little bit if you're playing it on the very last turn of the game, because then it's kind of a different card, but...
For sure. I mean, we're looking for ways to bypass that 6 dead at the end of the turn, effectively.
Right.
That makes Capital amazing, because it gives you $6, which is significantly more than $0.
Yeah, so there are two things that flip the light switch for Capital. There's shenanigans, and I'm calling shenanigans anything that's doing what Adam just said, bypassing the debt, or getting disproportionate value out of it, or something. And then there is using it to spike really big price points in a kingdom where for some reason that's really good.
So I feel like that's more of a dimmer switch, if we're using the light switch analogy.
Sure.
Because this is not nearly as good as that, but why don't we talk about it?
Sure.
Hitting big price points is good.
Yeah.
Hitting big price points early on is really good.
And hitting them consistently is usually pretty good too. And hitting a really big price point early and hitting a pretty high price point consistently are two different things. Capital's really good at the first thing and not so good at the second thing. So when we talk about Capital's ability to spike up to a really big price point, I think we can frame that discussion assuming that you're buying a Capital instead of buying a gold, let's say. I know they cost different, but let's look at gold, which you put it into your deck, and it's not as flashy, it doesn't give you as much money as Capital, but it enables more consistent money and more consistent price points than Capital does, whereas price point gets you to a really big, or Capital gets you to a really big price point faster and inconsistently. So we look for times when that's good.
So you say inconsistently, and I want to clarify that a little bit. Because when you play the Capital, you are almost certainly going to hit that big price point.
Okay, I can see why inconsistently would be misleading.
Yeah, there's a very low chance you won't hit it. With gold, I mean, you want to hit that price point multiple times.
Yeah.
Right? And Capital's not as good as doing that. You have to give up a lot, because every time you see your Capital, yeah, you're going to hit it, but then like you're spending other turns just paying off debt and cleaning up the mess, and that's no fun.
Right.
So gold is certainly better in that case.
And so we want to look for situations where hitting a really big price point is so good that it's disproportionately valuable to do it than it would be to keep hitting a reasonable price point throughout the game. Like, we had a really good example in the last episode from the kingdom where we talked about inheritance, and we bought capital as our first 5 in that kingdom every time we could because it got us to inheritance, and that's one of those canonical examples of a high impact buy that you need to spike up to a big price point for.
Right. I think, importantly, inheritance is really good early in the game because it can effectively thin those 3 estates and gain 3 good cards. And both of those things are really good early on in the game. It also, that, quote, consistency is a big deal there because now that I've put this capital in my deck, I don't have to worry about trashing the estates. I know I'm going to hit that 7, so I can keep the estates around until I hit my 7 because I know it's going to happen. With a gold, I may not get that. I may have to put multiple golds in my deck or, realistically, trash my estates to make my inheritance less good. So I think inheritance is probably the poster child for, like, it has all of the boxes checked on, yes, capital is amazing here for its spiking ability.
Yes, and there are other really good, like, high-impact single buys that we look for that are hard to get to without something like capital. We can think about something like Forge.
Yeah, Forge is the other big one.
Yes, or Expand, or Prince. These are things that you buy, and buying them a single time is really high impact. Now, that's different from something just being expensive that you want. If you think about Grand Market as a contrasting example, and we're again comparing it to gold, the gold is much better for buying grand markets than the capital is because the grand market is something that has a lower impact per card you buy, but you want a lot of it. And the capital isn't helping you get a bunch of grand markets. The capital is helping you buy one high impact card, whereas it's not helping you consistently hit that price point over multiple turns.
So I think a similar rule applies for King's Court as grand market. And, like, that's not to say that you never do it. It's just not quite as good because those cards get a lot better when you have a lot of them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, the first one you get helps you get more of them. So maybe you still want to do it anyway. Yeah. It's just not nearly as good, and I would look for other ways first.
If you can realistically do it with gold instead, I think that's a better, more sound strategy.
Sure, with gold or maybe through other means.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, you know what else is really expensive, though, that you might want to spike up to? The most expensive card in the game. Well, almost.
King's Castle.
I mean, basically, I was going to say Province, but, like, yes,
there we go.
Big honkin' victory cards, right?
Yeah, Province is something you can definitely buy with capital.
Right. So, we've been talking so far about early in the game, cards that are good early in the game, and capital helps you artificially hit those high price points maybe earlier than other things would, right? But I think...
artificial is a good way of putting it.
Yeah. I just made that up, but it sounds so delicious. Man, I'm so good at coining Dominion terms.
TM.
Man, you make your own shuffle look so hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, these were at the beginning of the game, and capital certainly has its use at the end of the game.
Definitely.
First of all, if it's the last turn of the game and you played a capital and then you ended the game, doesn't matter how much debt you have, man, you can still win the game.
Right.
So capital's real good there.
Yeah, capital at the very end of the game is pretty good, and there's a lot to be said for picking up a capital if you have a strong hunch that the first time you draw it is also going to be the last time.
Well, I mean, a time you draw it is going to be the last time.
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, that ending the game is one of those ways of just bypassing the debt. And so that particular case, that one time that you play the capital, if you're in that situation, that's really good. It's a lot better than all this other garbage we've been talking about.
And something I really want to stress here is that he's talking about a single high-impact buy. The highest impact, in fact, ending the game on a win. That's, like, the biggest impact thing you could be doing with the capital. But, like, he's talking about buying Province with capital. I think that's really significant because there are times when you don't want to be buying Province with capital, if we're coming back to comparing it to gold. And I want to just cement in this illustration here. We talk about 2 times you might want to buy a Province, either to score points and win the game or to enable tournament. And so if you are trying to buy provinces to score points and win the game with them, you want to be hitting 8 consistently. And gold is better for that than capital, usually. Whereas the capital is really good for getting the province at the time that you want it with your tournament, which is ASAP. So in that point, we're getting into what we're talking about in terms of a difference between spiking and just making your deck better.
Right, so, I mean, if it's early on in the game when you care about the quality of your deck, then yes, the gold is going to do a little more work for you here. Later on in the game, I think after you've started to green a little bit and your deck is worse, I think that's where the capital gets better.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I'm thinking of this situation where my win condition is to empty provinces. Maybe my opponent's going for something else, or maybe I need to get all these provinces to win the game. Capital's going to help me do that. And I would certainly consider buying capital over duchy if getting those provinces meant that I could win the game, regardless of my deck control. In fact, especially when my deck is bad, because there's probably no other way I'm going to be hitting 8.
Right. So capital definitely brings out its spiking potential in a big money deck, and not just any big money deck, but a particular kind of big money deck. And I was thinking about a good way to describe this kind of big money deck that takes advantage of capital, and I really couldn't think of a good way to put it. And then Wandering Winder came up with something way better than I could. He called it garbage. And so, like, capital's really good.
That's a great way of putting it.
Capital is really good in big money decks that are bad, that are terrible and inconsistent. Now, I want to stress that using capital as your only means to hit province sometimes and then having a couple of cleanup turns, that's terrible. That's super inconsistent and it's slow.
He used the word garbage to describe it.
Right. And I stole that from somebody else. And that's really bad. Sometimes it's the best thing you have, because maybe it's a game where you're being junked and there's no trashing. Or you're constantly being hit with discard attacks and there's no way to get your hand size back up, or what have you. If it's the only way to hit province, obviously it's going to be okay.
If you can build a deck that's better than garbage, you probably want to do that.
Pro tip.
Yeah, we're really hitting the hard-hitting points of advice here on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, there's an argument for capital about, like, well, even though it makes $0 on your turn, you can smooth out your draws by not wasting... that's not very good, and I don't want to talk about it. Do you have anything else to say before we break capital?
So, I do. What the hell is that voice? But, yeah, not really. I mean, capital being your best way of hitting province is definitely a small subset of games, and these other things that we've talked about are also kind of a subset of games. They exist, definitely, but what we're going to get into now is a little sexier.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit more exciting. It's what you want to be using capital for, and it's actually a collection of edge cases, which is weird, because capital is a card that's defined by its edge cases in a lot of ways. They're in ways more prominent than the common use cases.
Yeah, I'm seeing that shoulder going down a little bit, revealing some of that muscular tone that's up. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So there's,
and also there's capital.
Yeah.
And so
let's talk about some cards that are really good with capital.
Shenanigans.
Yeah, some capital shenanigans. I think the big one, the big kahuna here,
the 1,000-pound Mandarin in the room,
the $1 million Mandarin question.
Yeah,
is Mandarin.
Mandarin capital.
Yeah, so this is one of the 3 and maybe 4 things that I actually call a combo, and that means that they're super amazing, and when you see it, you just do it. Like, it's that good.
And also, the way that you play around it is different than the way you would normally build a deck in Dominion, because all of the principles that you know and love have gone out the window because you're just playing to this combo.
Yeah, it's really, they're really good together. The idea, I mean, I don't want to get into the details of the combo. We're going to link an article that is pretty good, that tells you more of the details about that specific combo. But the idea is you play multiple capitals, you get a buttload of money in buys, and then you buy some good stuff. But then you also buy a Mandarin, which top decks your capital, so you don't have to pay the debt, and then you get to play him next turn. You just keep doing that until you win the game, and your deck gets bad, but it doesn't matter because all you're drawing is capitals.
Yeah, you are never playing the Mandarins, to clarify.
You're never even drawing them. Well,
Yeah.
you're rarely drawing them. It's pretty rare that you actually draw a Mandarin in that deck.
Yeah, so that's the big combo. That's the gorilla in the room. That's the biggest, most broken synergy I think that anyone's come up with capital, and it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's real good.
It double provinces pretty reliably, and even if it gets hit with a discard attack, it single provinces pretty easily and maybe picks up some duchies.
Province plus duchy each
Yeah.
turn, and it threatens a double province and then the game.
Yeah, the only thing that really like kills it is Minion.
Yeah, Minion really
wrecks
craps all over a lot of combo decks, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
which is good.
Oops.
Yeah, about time Minion did something fun. It did something like good for the game. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry.
The name of the game is Do Minion. I don't know what
That's
you're talking
right.
about.
That's right. So there are some other Capital Mandarin or a Mandarin Capital, whatever
Well,
you want to call it.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
That's not the only broken thing with Capital. It's the most powerful one, but there are some others that are worth looking at and knowing about.
Yeah.
There's one that's a very strong second place, and I call this close to power level in terms of Capital Mandarin. And when I say close, I mean it's a cut above everything else we're going to talk about.
It's not close to Mandarin Capital. It's just better than all the other stuff.
Right. So, and that's Counterfeit Capital.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
You play the capital twice, trash it, you don't get the debt. It's really straightforward. It's a very simple combo. You play Counterfeit, and then you counterfeit your capital. You get $13 and 3 buys. There's not much more to say about it.
It's pretty nice. I mean, the only downside is that you have to trash your capital. But, like, I mean, you get a lot of burst potential, so eventually one day you'll not trash the capital because you're winning the game. But just rebuying the capital at that point is actually really good, because Counterfeit is a card that, first of all, enables a deck that's able to draw Counterfeit and Capital together.
Right.
And a lot of these other synergies, besides Mandarin, don't necessarily do that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
You're playing that out a little bit differently. The Mandarin Capital thing, you're just doing a very specific thing every turn until you win the game. And then the Counterfeit Capital, you're playing a more standard game of Dominion. You just have this broken synergy you're playing off of.
Right. It's I mean, it's interactive. You can be drawing other cards and doing other things besides that. But you play a capital. You buy a capital for 5. You counterfeit it for 13, where you might have otherwise only had 0. And that's pretty stinking good, even if you have to buy the capital back. It also gives you a buttload of buys. And if that matters to you, there it is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So there's some others that are pretty good. Those are the two. In my mind, those are the two that are.
You got Usain Bolt, and then you got some other really fast guy.
Those are the two that you need to know about before I think you can say, yeah, I understand Capital. And then there are some other ones you should probably know about, but aren't quite as good.
Yeah,
but
pretty
are
good.
Still a lot of the time worth playing around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the next tier is probably Crown and Fortune. These are ways of doubling your capital, but then you only have to pay the debt once, because you only discard the capital one time, even though you're effectively getting to play it twice.
Yeah, I mean, you and I had some conversation about it earlier, where I didn't think it was quite as good as you were saying, and then you went into some cases, and I'm kind of coming around to Capital Fortune being better than Crown Fortune.
Right. I think, I think you mean Crown Capital, right?
I'm sorry, yeah.
Fortune is a better enabler for capital than Crown is. And
because you could play multiple capitals and double all of them with a single fortune.
Yeah.
Whereas a bunch of crowns would need to double a bunch of capitals.
Right.
So that's pretty good, and you could play around that as your endgame payload. Like, you could build a deck that just plays off those two cards to win the game, and it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I realize that it sounds a lot like, well, I mean, if I just played a gold instead of a capital, then I'm getting effectively the same amount of money for my life. If I play a gold and then a fortune, I have 6. If I play a capital and a fortune, I have 12 that I have to pay 6 of it back, so I'm really only getting 6. But having all that money all at once is a really big deal, especially when you're going to be dealing with the huge amounts of money in buys. The buys are relevant here, that Fortune is going to give you if you're able to draw your deck and play and get a whole bunch of money. Because eventually, you're going to buy a buttload of crap and end the game, and you're
Yeah.
going to have like 24 debt or something, and that doesn't matter. And so you, at some point, you are completely bypassing it, even though you're kind of only halfway bypassing it throughout the course of the game.
And that kind of comes back to the principle we talked about, the difference between just making your deck better and using it to spike, which is kind of what we're getting into here, and it comes down to using it for a single high-impact buy. The highest impact buy is, of course, the one that ends the game, but...
Sure, but the other ones, the fact that you're getting that money up front means you can put more better stuff in your deck, and that stuff is getting doubled the next time you play it because you have a fortune.
Definitely.
So you're really getting all of the other slight benefits of capital that we were kind of sort of talking about earlier with the fortune at a much lower cost. And so I think that's why fortune is probably numero tres, getting the bronze medal here in terms of capital synergies.
And then the chocolate medal, it's like foil metal with chocolate inside. It's not an actual medal, but it's a candy. That goes to Crown, and then I think Crown splits it in a three-way tie with CRYPT and Herbalist.
Well, I mean, CRYPT and Herbalist I think are going to be worse than Crown, but they're pretty close.
Marginal. Yeah,
It
we're those synergies are there. And if they're the best payload available, it's definitely worth playing around. But they're not something I would steer off course to go for.
Yeah, that seems pretty good. With Crown, I mean, decks with lots of crowns in them are usually really good. So it's usually not a big stretch to incorporate a capital in there and get some good mileage out of it.
That's fair.
However, with Herbalist, I mean, Herbalist isn't a very strong card. It also takes an action to play, and then the worst thing, I think, is it makes you top deck that capital. So the idea is I wanted to draw this capital with this Herbalist. And if I'm top decking the capital every turn, that's a stop card. It doesn't help me draw more Herbalists. Right. So now I'm either flooding with Herbalists, which sounds just like I feel dirty just saying that.
Yeah.
Or like I'm just dealing with this inconvenience that Herbalist gives me. And if I want to do that more than once in a turn, it just gets more and more painful from there. I have to play two Herbalists after drawing them, after I top deck two capital. This just sounds like the worst.
Yeah, you have to wonder how good of a deck is this enabling. Like, you at that point, I think you're really capitalizing on the plus buys, or what are you doing?
I'm sorry, you just said capitalizing on the plus buys. That was amazing, but that was also a really good point. Like, you're getting a bunch of buys from this, and I think
that's
relevant.
That's the only advantage you really have over big money at that point, because you're jumping through a lot of hoops for not a ton of money, really.
It's a decent amount,
a lot of money,
but
yeah.
But it's I mean, it's not all that much better than gold. It is better. Don't get me wrong, and those buys can be relevant if that's important to you.
So CRYPT is actually not that much better than the Herbalist one. I
think it's worse.
It's a little bit better in terms of the end result, but it takes a lot more setup, and you have to jump through even more hoops. You put the capital into the CRYPT when you're done. You subvert the debt that way.
Right. That's tough. You can draw it next turn, but like doing this every turn is very difficult.
Yeah.
You kind of need two CRYPTs to make it happen for one capital every turn, and if you want to do this with more than one capital, you're gonna have to like draw a lot of CRYPTs and stuff, and this is just not worth it. Like, I'm gonna have to want that CRYPT in my deck already if I'm gonna use this at all. But I mean, if it's right in front of you, do it. It's great.
I guess capital is kind of like a dimmer switch, like you said, because we've gone into the best and brightest. Yeah. Where it's like game-breaking, decisive, and we've gone into pretty, really good, and then we've gone into this is okay and it's worth playing around. Now we're into janky whatever decks that maybe you can try sometime for fun. And now we're going to turn the switch off and talk about some things that are troll combos, or not. They look like they're there, but they're illusions. And those are Mint and Bonfire.
So, like, Mint can be good one time in a game. When you wanted to buy that Mint anyway, if somehow you have a buttload of draw and you have a capital in your deck for some reason...
ton of capitals in play, yeah.
That can be fine. That sounds really narrow.
And then Bonfire is just bad. It gets around the dead, but what?
Like, I got $6, but I spent 3 of it and that extra buy on a Bonfire, and now my capital's gone. So if I had just bought gold, which I realize is more expensive, but I'm going to be a lot better off because now I have a gold in my deck.
There's a reason we're talking about these toward the end of the episode.
Yeah, it's like we have this really amazing halogen light bulb that's super bright when it's all the way on. But now my Arduino microcontroller is taking the pulse width modulation down to a lower frequency. And you can kind of start to see that it's blinking on and off at this point. And maybe it's off a little more often than it's on here.
Right. I don't know
and
what
maybe
Adam's
I'm having a
about.
seizure.
Yeah, I don't know what Adam's talking about, but I certainly know what it's like to have a seizure, and it's about what it's like to take 6 debt when you're discarding your capital.
It's basically
too.
the same thing.
That's kind of the gist of capital. There are some common use cases, namely spiking price points with it, and then there are the broken synergies that you're trying to play off of, and beyond that, it's very much a polarizing card.
Yeah. A polarizing card. Maybe that halogen gives you some polarized light.
Yes.
I gotta tell you, I got some sunglasses that have polarized lenses, and oh my gee, I feel like I have robotically enhanced vision.
Nice.
Like, I got laser eye surgery last October, and I'm like on better than 2015 right now. I put those sunglasses on, I'm like, I gotta be at least 2012, maybe 2010 vision. It's amazing. I feel like a superhuman. Just thought you'd like to know.
He's started fighting crime.
Yeah, actually I have.
With his supervision.
You're welcome.
Right. Making the city a safer place on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
So, you want to talk about this kingdom here that has capital in it?
Yeah. So this kingdom has capital.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be playing it over the next week.
Yeah. I'm gonna read you some cards. How about that?
I should know what's in the kingdom before I play it.
Yeah. Good call. So, this one's got Embargo, Golem, Herald, Ironmonger, Band of Misfits, Capital, Counterfeit, Courtier, Relic, Prince, and there's Expedition and Conquest. Once again, for our audio-only listeners, Embargo, Golem, Herald, Ironmonger, Band of Misfits, Capital, Counterfeit, Courtier, Relic, Prince, with Expedition and Conquest. Yeah, so I'm looking at Capital and Counterfeit. They're right there next to each other in the $5 C card department. Looks pretty delicious there, huh? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's centralizing to the board. I don't see anything else worth playing around in terms of endgame payload. The only thing that would catch my eye, other than things that would enable province per turn, would be like Courtier showing Relic or whatever, but that's not that great. So, yeah, Counterfeit Capital is I think what you build around here, and the best way to support it, man, there's no thinning.
There's Counterfeit.
Oh, there's treasure thinning, but estates and curses are in your deck forever.
Yeah, so like Embargo. Someone could really crap on your parade with that one, huh?
Yeah, so the thing about that, and I wrote an article on Embargo that goes into, what I think it's actually the most underrated and under-optimized, underutilized card in Dominion, by the way. Not that it's one of the best cards in Dominion. I think it's definitely the most underrated one, though. But this is not one of those times, because this is one of those times where you actually hurt yourself as much as your opponent if you try to embargo something. Because you need a lot.
Well, I open 5-2. I open Counterfeit Embargo. I play my Embargo turn 3 and Embargo the Counterfeit. Screw you, man!
Okay,
you gotta take a purple with your Counterfeit.
That's fun. I'll just take the curse to do it, though. Yeah, it's not that big a deal.
But it feels bad.
It feels bad, and it's actually a lot worse if I have to take a curse and you don't. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot worse. Yeah. But
luckily, when I open 5-2, my Embargo misses the shuffle. Or I'm going second, and I draw it turn 3, and it doesn't matter, because they get their Counterfeit turn 3. And anyway, sorry.
I mean, in this case, Embargo is just a silver that disappears, I think.
Yeah. It's pretty sweet.
What do you put your Embargo token on? On this board, in this board only, I don't think it matters too much.
I don't think so.
I don't think that there's a whole lot of way to gain a tactical advantage off of it, unless your opponent buys a potion. Put it on the Golem pile. Yeah, that's bad. So, what do you actually do here? I'm thinking that Ironmongers are going to be pretty important. Those are going to pile, I'd say.
I don't know. Draw is pretty tight here, and the way you draw cards is Prince or Expedition. I'm not really... I mean, Herald can do it, so I would probably be buying Herald over Ironmonger a lot.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm drilling hard into those Ironmongers.
Oh, I'm drilling hard into those Heralds. Bring it, brah.
Nice. I'm going to be, like, wanting to print some of them. And I'm going to...
Yeah, you print Herald, brah.
Like, I want some Heralds, too, don't get me wrong, but, like, man, I really want to line up my Capitals and Counterfeits and get a bunch of them, but...
Yeah. Herald, I think, is better for that. Yeah, I just went there.
I don't know about that, man.
Oh, yeah. Bring it,
Man,
broski.
I don't know. So, Band of Misfits seems like a pretty okay card here. No, it doesn't, actually. No.
If someone embargoes my Heralds, I'm getting a Band of Misfits, man.
So you play the Herald, yeah. Yeah, I mean, So, actually, I was about to say Band of Misfits seems pretty okay here, but there's so much competing at 5. So, yeah, no, it's not. It's not as good as the other things.
I want a limited number of other crap in my deck.
Man, there's so much good stuff here.
Okay,
5.
I mean, sure, unless someone embargoes.
Like the
Herald,
Relic attack is non-trivial. You're not drawing your deck here.
You can play. Well, I think it matters because it's so hard to draw, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what you said. I think Expedition is a big deal.
Yeah, so getting an expedition, a tactical expedition here and there is going to be really good, and it's going to really reward you tracking your deck.
Well, I think strategic expeditions.
There we go.
Because that distinction means something.
Yeah, no, you set out
total
to buy
garbage.
expeditions. Yeah.
I didn't say that just for the sake of disagreeing with Jake. That never happens on this podcast, by the way.
I think it does. But the
oh, that was good. That was quality.
That was
really good.
So the synergy we're playing around is Capital Counterfeit, and the debate is going to come down to how you enable it.
That is so good.
The first Capital Counterfeit you do, I think you're on that turn. You want to get 2 princes if you can. Yeah.
2 princes.
I think so.
Like, I mean, 1 prince is probably fine.
I mean, if you hit 16 and have the ability to get 2 princes, I like 2 princes. I think princing your cantrips, your heralds, and your ironmongers is going to be really important to your consistency.
I think princing a cantrip is going to be really important for your consistency. I also think buying provinces is pretty good for your consistency.
I think you went 2 or 3.
All right. Well,
I think you're going to have time for it, too.
Jake, are you disagreeing with me just to disagree?
No, I actually think that there's going to be time enough to build up and get that really big turn-off where you can have a triple province turn instead of doubles.
All right, that doesn't seem good to me at all. What would you open here?
What am I going to open?
Oh, this is hilarious, because I crapped all over Ironmonger, but I'm going to open with it. I'll get 1 Ironmonger, and then I'll get Heralds.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you're not going to open with a Herald. That's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm opening Ironmonger Embargo.
I'm getting a silver.
I'm getting the Embargo, actually, because I don't want the silver in my deck after.
Oh, I totally want the silver. Silver's a really good card. Did you know that? I can counterfeit it, man. If I don't want it later, I don't give a crap.
But
silver's amazing. Give me silver. I want to hit 55 times.
I don't want to be drawing silver. I want to be drawing counterfeits and capitals.
Do you know what helps me hit 5 to get counterfeits and capitals?
Embargo.
Do you know what helps me more than Embargo?
That's true. The silver is long term. I'll probably take a silver at some point.
Making Luck, a silver podcast.
A silver apologist podcast.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, so there's an interesting debate here of, do you open Embargo or do you open silver? And I am not trying to fall into the silver haters club. I am thinking that here I have a particular reason for maybe not wanting the silver, but I am doubting myself. I'm not 100% committed to the Embargo being better than silver.
I'm 100% committed to the silver being better than the Embargo.
Adam is 100% committed. I'm not. I'm waffling. I'm full of doubt.
Making Luck, a doubt podcast.
Okay, so Courtier,
Yeah?
do you see yourself picking one up?
I'm
thinking about it.
I don't know. I got a lot of 5s I want, man. I want a Relic. I want a Counterfeit. I want another Counterfeit.
That's my other question. Do you want a Relic?
Yes.
I mean, the attack is really brutal.
Yes.
But do you have time?
Relic makes more time for it, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely want the Relic. Yeah.
So your first 5 is Counterfeit. Your second 5 is probably a second Counterfeit. And
my second 5 depends on a lot. It might be a Relic.
I think most of the time it's going to be a second Counterfeit.
It depends on a lot.
It does. I'm with you, but I think it's more often than not. I see it being a second Counterfeit.
You're probably right.
And then the third one, man, it could be a Relic.
Your face could be a Relic.
My face could be a Relic. Yeah, actually, I don't see Courtier seeing a lot of play. What am I doing with that? I don't really want to be gaining the gold.
Getting $3 in a buy?
Yeah, I don't...
It's pretty decent.
$3 in a buy is fine, but there's just... You can do better here. So, I like the...
You can do better here.
Yeah, you can do better here, because if that Courtier were a capital instead, I could be building more into what I actually want to be doing.
Yeah, but the Courtier stays in your deck. You want some amount of money that doesn't get trashed when you play it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting it early, though. I think early on, I'm going to be...
I don't know if I'm getting it early either.
I'm going to be getting 2 Counterfeits and probably a Relic and then a Capital pretty quickly to get that online. And along the way, every time I don't hit 5, I'm going to be buying either a Herald or... No, an Ironmonger, if I can.
There it goes, yeah.
And...
Expedition, man. It's going to be
an Expedition. Good. If I feel like I need a silver, I'll take one. Possibly an Embargo instead. And buying a prince as soon as I can. I want 2 or 3 princes out.
I want un prince. That's Spanish for 1 prince.
Got it. Yep. Thank you.
Un princo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let us know what you think about this kingdom. We're going to play it, and then we'll talk about it at the start of next episode.
Yeah,
it's going to be pretty great.
Yeah, totally.
Here on Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
A Dominion podcast.
A Dominion podcast.
A capitalism podcast. I don't buy a bunch of Chapels either. Chapel's a great card, though. Like, I don't buy... Yeah, your second silver is a lot better than your 5th silver. Your first Chapel's a lot better than your second Chapel, too. But Chapel's a really good card.
Your second Chapel is a lot better than your 5th Chapel, too.
Yeah, yeah, if you're fighting the Chapel split, things went wrong for you at some point.
That's rough, man.
Yeah, man, Chapel with the obelisk pile on
You just figure out that those tower points just got really relevant. You just got to race for it. You can't let your opponent get any edge.
Yeah, and the best part is that once you have the Chapel in your deck, you can trash all those Chapels, which you can't play.
Not for tower or obelisk.
I mean, you can do it. It makes your deck better.
Okay, that's... Wait, but no, Chapel's an amazing card. It makes your deck worse.
Sorry, I forgot. Cards are either good or bad all the time.
Yeah.
It's a light switch.
Yeah.